call to order the City of West Sacramento special meeting of the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission for December 7th, 2020. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Vice Chair Paul Hamus.
Present.
Commissioner Zimmer.
Present.
Commissioner Wetzel.
Present.
Commissioner Lichtenstein.
Present.
Chair Hirsch.
Present.
And I do not see Commissioner Chrisman Kaufman or Commissioner Parker or Commissioner Love. So I guess
Commissioner Parker is on.
Commissioner Parker just stepped in. So Commissioner Parker is present?
I'm here. Sorry for my tardiness.
Okay. So 6 are present. And
Wonderful.
the rest are absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. To begin, pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N2920, members of the TMI Commission and staff will participate in this meeting via a teleconference. To reduce the spread of COVID-19, members of the public are asked to watch the meeting live stream or via Wave Cable Channel 20 and to submit comments in writing by 5 p.m. on December 7th, 2020. To submit a comment in writing, please email Jennifer SC at cityofwestsacramento.org and write public comment in the subject line. In the body of the email, include the item number and or title of the item, as well as your comments. All comments received by 5 p.m. will be provided to the TMI Commission and posted on the website. The comments submitted shall become part of the record of the meeting. And with that, we move on to General Administration Function Part 1 of the agenda, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the Commission. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments at this evening's meeting?
There were no public comments received.
Thank you. Item 1B in that case, Commissioner Communications. Commissioners, are there any communications at this time? Seeing none, moving on to the consent agenda. There is one item on it tonight, the consideration of approval of the minutes of the November 2nd, 2020 TMI meeting. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
To approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, I think we have a motion by Commissioner Parker. I think Commissioner Wetzel seconded just before another commissioner could. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Commissioner Wetzel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lichtenstein?
Aye.
Commissioner Zimmer?
Aye.
Commissioner Parker?
Yes.
Chair Hirsch?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Paul Hamus?
Aye.
That's 6 ayes and I guess 2 absent. And the motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on then to the regular agenda, we have one item, item number 3, consideration of the storm drain and stormwater master plan.
Should I proceed, Jennifer?
Yes, you may share your PowerPoint.
Okay, I'll see if I can. Okay, first of all, I'm going to share this entire screen, even the borders, because when I go to slide view, for some reason, some of the text falls off. So I hope it doesn't bother some of you, but hopefully this is still legible for all. But thank you, Chair and fellow commissioners. My name is Candido Ramirez. I'm a senior civil engineer with the City of West Sacramento. I am here to present an update on the stormwater and storm drainage master plan. that's been underway for a few years now. The effort of this plan began in the spring of 2017. And since then, my predecessor, Wendy Williams, and perhaps others presented updates to this commission at least once, to environmental utilities, and to city council 3 times. On the right-hand side of your slide, I have a figure that that I can use to briefly go over the background of the drainage for the city. On the top of this figure is the North Basin, which was not subjected to master planning prior to the city being incorporated in 1987. Most of the infrastructure that is in place now is undersized and therefore has a higher probability of flooding. The South Basin that you see in the bottom of the exhibit was master planned since the early 1990s, and as a result, most of the infrastructure is property sized, and therefore there's a lower probability of it flooding. This figure, I hope it's legible here. I'll go to the 4th slide. This essentially shows all the existing storm drainage facilities within the city. And the yellow dots that you see here, I know they're not too legible, but those represent pump stations that are typically at the downstream end of a storm water drainage system. As you can see, the North Basin has very few detention basins. And the South Basin has quite a few more detention basins, which are typically ideal way to manage stormwater. The city's drainage network includes ownership and maintenance by these entities here: City of West Sacramento, Reclamation District 900, RD Reclamation District 537, a little bit of Caltrans, and Washington Unified School District, and also a small portion of Touchstone Homeowners Association in the South Basin. In general, the city owns and maintains most of the drainage inlets and pipes, while the reclamation districts own and maintain most of the canals and open channels, as well as the pump stations.
Oh.
Here's a figure that I came across, which I think is appropriate. It essentially, the left half of the exhibit shows the natural hydrology evolution or pattern, in that when there's no development, the rainwater and runoff and snow melt, whatever you may have, either percolates or infiltrates into the ground, and any excessive runoff goes into natural flowing streams. With development, there's an increase of hard surface, impervious surface, and if that increase is not accounted for properly, it leads to erosion, flooding, and pollution of community. And this is essentially what we have on a North Basin for the City of West Sacramento, and to a certain extent, not entirely. What was done for the South Basin there was some modeling and some planning done, and therefore we were able to mitigate, for the most part, erosion, flooding, and pollution for the South Basin. This is where the exhibit loses text. Let me go back to the other. Okay. The hydrology assumptions that were used essentially up to this effort taking place were from 1992 Sacramento County guidelines, which are less conservative than the most current guidelines that are out there. So what this master plan uses are 2009 Yolo County hydrology guidelines, which for the most part, or in general, it'll lead to about 15% more stormwater runoff when we use this type of this storm. It's called a 100-year, 24-hour design storm. These numbers that you see here are essentially the numbers that the stormwater model used for existing and proposed development. So, and for the most part, these numbers are a little bit higher than was used prior to this effort. Stormwater management involves quantity and quality, and if we're able to manage quantity or mitigate for it, that typically is able to also manage quality. And what I mean by that is if we can capture stormwater in a basin or in a canal, there's more ability to clean debris clean debris from that stormwater that's in a basin. I'm going to skip the second bullet here, but typically the way projects are implemented is stormwater projects is by taking care of the project that's furthest downstream, nearest the discharge point. Because if you implement a project that's upstream, it'll for example, let's say you upsize the pipe upstream, you increase the pipe size, allow more water to convey, but if you don't take care of the downstream pipes, it'll eventually clog up and cause more problems, more issues. As I said before, any work that the city does will require close coordination with the reclamation districts, the school district, Caltrans, and an HOA that exists within the city. The biggest challenge that you'll see here in a few minutes will be funding, and hopefully we will also be able to take care of water quality issues that exist. So the hydraulic system improvements that come out of this master plan so far basically does reveal the need for significant improvements, mostly to the South Basin. But since I have the south of the mostly to the illustration, I apologize. But I'll start here with the North Basin because that's the next slide, and this is the way the report, the master plan was presented in this order. This figure summarizes most of the recommended improvements for the South Basin. And for the most part, it'll require culvert upsizing. And there are 11 or 12 culverts that need to be upsized according to the model. And the one pump station that does need to be upsized is one at Stonegate and Lake Washington Boulevard. So this is what you see here are basically, again, these green pipes and then this red triangle. That's the extent of the improvements that are recommended for the South Basin. Now we'll go over to the North Basin. And for the North Basin, I'm only going to show 2 exhibits here. There are actually at least 9 exhibits or 6 exhibits, I apologize. So I'm going to show you, again, this exhibit and the next one, and I may toggle back and forth between them. The report does recommend improvements to this pump station, which is northwest of the CHP headquarters. I hope everybody is oriented here properly. This is I-80, and then we have IKEA here. So again, starting from the downstream end, which is this pump station, which discharges to the Tule Canal and then eventually to the Yolo bypass. There's upgrades recommended there. The next facility that's recommended to be upsized is an existing 7.5-foot diameter culvert under I-80. The model recommends adding a second culvert at that location. And if you follow the system upstream, this is Harbor Boulevard. That culvert would also have to be upsized. We would add a culvert that's 7.5-foot diameter, and that would supplement an existing 5-foot diameter culvert. Now the next slide is right next to this one here. So I'll move over. Again, any of these culverts here, any line work that's in red, those are pipe or culvert upsizings that are recommended. And I'm going to stop at this location here. This note here, it's labeled 81M619, and I'll come back to it. But again, this is an example of numerous improvements that are recommended for the North Basin. Most pump stations in the city are fairly old, and many of them, at the very least, need some form of upgrade, at least replacing a pump or a motor, or adding communications to them. So at the very minimum, they do need some form of upgrade. Some of them also need to be upsized. So that involves adding a pump, making significant upgrades to the structure. And most of those upgrades are difficult to do with an existing operational pump. So what typically happens is they have to be done right next to it, to the existing pump station, and then eventually they're interconnected, and so they can function as a combo, basically. But when you construct right next to it, it also it inevitably requires land acquisition, and that's typically a challenge with a lot of projects. The other potential challenge would be consultation with the federal regulatory agencies, and this is a challenge for pump stations, but you'll also see for detention basins. So again, pump stations are typically at the downstream end of a drainage system, and oftentimes right next to them, right upstream of that, are the detention basins. So these two exhibits, this one and the next one, will complement each other. So this is a picture of a dry detention basin, which is at Summerfield Park. And on the right-hand side is a wet detention basin, which is at Gateway and Stonegate. I'm sorry, it's Lake Washington and Stonegate. I'm not sure why it says Gateway. Lake Washington and Stonegate. So here we have the characteristics of a dry versus a wet. Dry detention basin are multi-purpose use. So they detain water, stormwater in the winter, and they can be used for recreational and sports in the remaining seasons. They typically have lower pumping costs because they're only used for 3-4 months out of the year. And they also typically have lower maintenance costs. Typically cleaning debris at the end of the winter, and then subsequently mowing the basin. The wet detention basins are single-purpose use, and they will detain stormwater all year long. A plus to them is that they typically do provide estuary habitat. For the most part, they do have higher pumping costs and higher maintenance costs. The bottom box here are notes common to both basins. We still plan on building detention basins for the remainder of the development on the South Basin. But that's not the case for the North Basin. Detention basins on the north will be challenging due to limited available land. One thing I need to point out is that in the report and also the staff report and also the stormwater report is that any detention basins that are depicted on those exhibits are general. They're not set in stone, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done before identifying a specific location. Another form of detention basin are underground vaults, and these are typically structures, either pipes or box culverts like you see here, and they're constructed, and once constructed, you can build whatever you want over. You can build a baseball field, soccer field, or any other park, whatever you wish over it. The drawback to these are cost. They're typically 2.5 to 3 times as much as an open detention basin. Then we have the channels, which are upstream of some detention basins. In our case, in the city of West Sacramento, most of the canals or channels that you see out there are owned and operated by RD 900. They are an excellent source for conveying and also storing large volumes of flow. They are easy to access and maintain, but it is costly to do. when considering widening these channels or basins, the biggest challenge will be right-of-way. So we would have to verify that right-of-way does exist, in order to make it viable. Pipe and culvert upsizings. While these may seem like straightforward, they are easy to do in local roads, but they're a lot harder to do at several crossings, especially in our case, crossings at I-80 and US 50, because getting those permitted through Caltrans is an uphill battle. I'll be honest with you, and a lengthy battle. And we also have several pipe upsizings that cross Union Pacific Railroad, which is also can involve a lot of effort. Chapter 11 of the master plan is labeled Improvement Program. Basically, the city staff and the consultant work together to develop this criteria to prioritize the projects, to see which projects should be implemented first. And it basically, criteria consists of looking at corridors, evacuation corridors, critical facilities, flood complaints, social equity, and the magnitude of flooded structures. So this next exhibit is a graphical explanation of that. When you see here, the red line work are the evacuation corridors. So anything that's close to those corridors or it affects those corridors would get a number and get a point basically, and would be added to the criteria. Critical facilities were defined by the city planning department. And as an example, City Hall is identified as a critical facility, which is right here. CHP is defined as a critical facility. And there are others similar to what I just explained. I think UPS is also a critical facility. Let's see here. What this exhibit also shows, and it goes back to the modeling, shows in blue, this is probably the most important part here. In blue are the areas that the hydraulic model shows that are more likely to flood. And if these flood areas impact a lot of structures, whether they're residential or commercial, that's going to increase the score significantly. So again, these flood areas are, I think, the most important part of this exercise. And so this next table here yielded a flood area criticality composite score of 4.9 to a flood area called Hobson Avenue and Bright Avenue. So let me go back to the other exhibit and I can point to where it's at. That general area is basically right in here. Okay, and you can see why that area received a score of 4.9. So the higher the score, the more critical it is that it be addressed. So and I'm going to go back to the other slide here. Again, Hobson Avenue, Bright Avenue. And keep this number in mind also here, 81M619, because I'm going to go back to a couple other slides. But before I get to the figures, as I said earlier on, it is important that downstream facilities close to the discharge point be addressed, and not just the upstream facility. That particular pipe upsize is an upstream facility. In order for that pipe to fully discharge and convey, the logical thing to do would be to also implement these projects that are listed here. So the combination of that project and these projects are essentially $7.9 million. And I'm going to go back to some earlier exhibits here in a second here. So again, I mentioned a number, it's called a node 81M619. That's right in here. So all the projects that were listed up in that table that I just showed you basically follow this path here. Again, these pipes would have to be replaced. This is an open channel. This is a canal that would have to be widened. All the culverts downstream of it would need to be widened. And then you would follow, go over to the next exhibit. Again, this culvert would have to be widened. Luckily, this open canal west of I-80 and just east of I-80 is adequately sized. So there would not be a need to do anything there. And the last piece of the system would be the pump station. It would require some upgrades. Okay, so I just went over one system. For the North Basin, there are multiple systems. We have about 9 pages like this one here, full of projects and combination of projects. But all those nine pages and multiple systems basically lead to the improvement program cost. For the North Basin, the city's cost to improve those facilities would be $114 million. RD 900 is their cost would be nearly $50 million. Caltrans has a couple of small projects, and maintenance, which is on a different part of this report. But I didn't get into it. But regardless, maintenance does have a cost of about $3 million. So the total cost for the North Basin is $171 million. As I've said several times, the South Basin is in better shape, but there is a need to improve some facilities, which for the most part would need to be upgraded because of the new hydraulic model that we're using for this study. So, and these costs cannot be, are not covered by proposed development. So the total cost for the South Basin is $24 million. And then we have a total program cost for the for these improvements at $195 million. Let me see here. Funding. Currently, what's unfunded are North Basin improvements. There's very little or no funding. I think I recall seeing somewhere that Public Works receives about $170 million worth of $170,000. I apologize, $170,000 funds for O&M, and I believe that may be for the entire city. So there's that's a drop in the bucket. We would also need funding to cover any improvements that are unrelated to development, the ones I just pointed out previously, which are $24 million. And we would also need to implement a program that does cover O&M. What's next, soon after this report is finalized, or maybe even prior to finalizing, is preparation of a financing study. And that study will recalibrate the Southport Basin development impact fees, and also recommend options to pay for the citywide upgrades and O&M. So what I'd like to get from you, or we'd like to get from you, would be basically qualitative comments on facility upgrades and additions. I'd be curious to see what your opinions are of detention basins versus underground vaults, and detention basins on improved parcels, because those would create significant impacts to the program. And if detention basin on improved parcels is not an option, the other option would be to construct higher capacity pump stations and increase pipe sizes throughout the city, which is it's a trade-off. We'd also like to get some input from you on ranking these projects. So let me go back up here to this exhibit here. This last column on table 11.3 was ranked it was ranked by the city staff after the priority composite scores were developed. So, and basically we looked at evacuation and safety. Basically, those are the main criteria that we used. And so A's are priority projects, B's are lower priority, and C's are even lower. So you're welcome to provide input on that ranking. If you have any funding suggestions or options, we'd like to hear those, and feel free to ask any questions. And I'll close with the last slide, which is upcoming schedule. We'll present to the next commission next week. I forget the name right now, but also City Council early next year. And soon after that, we hope to finalize the report with any comments that we get from the commissioners and council. And concurrently, we'll likely solicit proposals for the financing and implementation study. And hopefully we may return in April or in the spring to your commission or city council. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Yeah, this, can certainly be a pretty dense topic, and the agenda item came in at over 100 pages, but I thought it was very clearly presented, and the report was very clearly laid out to explain the different options and the questions presented to us at the end here. Before I begin, Madam Clerk, I noticed that Commissioner Love joined us. Do we need to do a formal call for attendance, or should we proceed to Commissioner questions?
Are there any comments on this?
For this item, that if we don't need to say anything for Commissioner Love, I'll dive right in. Commissioners, are there any questions or comments from Mr. Ramirez at this time? Commissioner Zimmer.
Sure. I want to say thank you for your presentation and for the document that was sent to us. I know I didn't read all 222 pages in depth, but I did skim quite a lot of it, and I thought there was a lot of really good information in there about flooding depth and how the risk assessments were done and how the hydraulics were done. And this is the second time I think most of us have seen this, so I think that's also very helpful. So yeah, I appreciate that. Of course, I am very concerned about some of the, the things that were highlighted in the report, some of the inadequacies in the city's, infrastructure system for a 24-hour storm event. And I guess I have a couple of questions. Regarding a lot of the maps, you have a storage node flood depth and a model node flood depth. And I guess I'm curious as to what the difference is between those two, if you know. These I think they're basically represented as triangles and circles. Or if there isn't one.
Was it in this slide or in the report?
In both.
Must be the report.
Yeah, any one of the maps. It's okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot too much about that.
Repeat the question again, because go ahead. Repeat the question. Maybe we would answer it.
Looking at figure 11.1, I think you just had that up on the screen showing the North Basin modeled flood areas and also the evacuation streets and other sort of critical infrastructure, that kind of stuff. And on there is showing, I think, modeled flood depths of, especially up north, around 1.6 to 3.0 feet. And I was just curious what the differences between the storage and the modeled is.
Okay.
It's okay.
You're looking at details. I'll get back to you. I promise.
Okay. Okay. And one more pedantic question before I go to more general comments is in the report, table 6.5, I didn't quite understand how the math was done. So I'm a little concerned that there might be either something I don't understand or a bit of an error, but it looks to me, especially with that 81M 619 node, when I was looking at how this was calculated, I thought, boy, that should be 2.4 feet deep and not 1.5 or whatever it was. Anyway, it looked like the water depth should be the predicted flood depth is deeper. When I was trying to figure out how it worked, as opposed to what the table was showing, but it looks like to me on these maps that's consistent with, like, the maps actually look correct. So I think the model is probably consistent. Anyway, just check the math on table 6.5. I think is the only thing I would say.
Okay.
I was just trying to understand, like, what do these numbers mean? Does that mean I'm going to see 3 feet of water in front of my front door? Does this mean I'm going to see 1 foot of water in front of my front door? What exactly were those numbers meaning on table 6.5? So that's just, I'm going to set that aside because I don't think you have that in front of you. Okay, so I'm curious, I know that there's a funding gap, and I'm curious to know, I think somewhere in our documents that were handed out to us, they talked about how there isn't a lot of funding for stormwater, and that we would have to, if you could find a project that would have a multi-purpose use, a parks and rec use or a transportation corridor use, that maybe funding would be easier to come by. And I was just curious, like, I do see that there is a lot of potential for detention basins in parks. And I also think that perhaps some of the drainage channels are kind of their natural rights of ways. So, could those potentially be a park or some kind of corridor for pedestrians and or cyclists? And would that actually help find funding to improve them. Does anyone have thoughts on that?
Yes. So on the detention bases, the last version, last time Wendy presented to the commission was earlier this year. I think it was January or February of this year. The areas were more general, and now they're narrowed down a little more, which is good. But as I said before, we're not. There have been no discussions with owners of those parcels, or but it appears that there is some opportunity, especially near schools or existing parks, to convert them from a typical park to dry detention or underground vault. If they don't want to depress their facilities, their playfields, then perhaps a vault. And as far as the opportunity for along canals or channels for a pedestrian path, I think that's a good idea. And but the first thing we would need to do would be to verify existing right-of-way to make sure that we do have room to accommodate widening the channel and also leaving room for a path.
Yeah, and I should say I also see, you know, when I'm looking at this figure 11.1, which is showing the north side of the city, in that node that you highlighted, 81M619, a note just above the text, there appears to be some sort of field in that trapezoidal shaped parcel. And so I look at that and I wonder, well, maybe that could be a detention basin. I don't know who owns that. It might be part of the church that's there. But, you know, I wonder if in these areas that you're showing as flooding, one of the potential, those might be high priority areas for finding those open spaces that may be private, but to see if they'll be willing to work with the city on perhaps a parks improvement in exchange for a detention basin, multi-use of their fields.
Yeah,
which is
I think
cheaper, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a school in that vicinity, so it could be a school along with some fields.
Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
Oh, did I answer?
Do you have any other comments, Commissioner Zimmer?
I think I'm good. I'll let someone else speak.
Okay. Other commissioners, any questions or comments? Well, I'll jump in. Oh, no, Vice Chair Polhemus, I see you've unmuted yourself. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. You had requested some comments on the scoring criteria, in addition to perhaps, I believe, some funding opportunities. And though I don't necessarily think that, I do think like physical feasibility should be a consideration as to, you know, if there's a way to include any type of challenges or constraints to actually get the project completed, if it requires some acquisitions or other physical constraints, physical or ownership constraints, perhaps not as included in, or at least acknowledgement of it, perhaps maybe not, and also consideration and as like a 1 or a 0, a binary, but at least trying to assess the difficulty of actually physically getting that project completed. You know, whether you know you're dealing with trying to get some approvals through Caltrans, or that's, you know, you need to acquire property for the completion of that project. I do think that's, so I don't want that to be a major priority, is, you know, because it doesn't necessarily address the entire system, but at least having that understanding that, you know, that perhaps some projects could be prioritized if it is something that could be feasibly done in the next few years. And then in funding, I'm sure it'll be addressed in the in the financing plan, but I'm aware that the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, we're just gonna have to test the waters for some issuance or for some special assessments, especially those that could be used to address the ongoing operations and maintenance. So looking to form a new assessment, new special assessment on property taxes. I know it's unfavorable to many, but it's that type of funding mechanism is what's likely going to need to be considered for ongoing O&M. And I know the city has they've formed an EIFD, Enhanced Infrastructure Finance District, as to, see what sort of potential that could be used increase in property assessment values to bond finance some improvements. I know that's a big challenge, and perhaps there are other priorities in the future for other types of projects, but those are just, without seeing a full report, some of my comments as to some potential opportunities for ongoing and capital facility funding.
Yeah, so I agree. I think assessment will likely come out of financing study. I think it's inevitable because we're talking about a lot of money.
Other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Lichtenstein.
Yes, I just want to say thank you. I'm new to this commission, so this presentation was brand new to me. Thank you. It was very informative. Regarding your request to have some feedback in terms of prioritization, the one thing I would request, or I think would be interested to see, is similar to comments that were previously made by my fellow commissioners, is understanding approximately feasibility and cost. So I'm just going to hypothesize right now. Let's say we have 10 top projects, and numbers 5 through 10 are very feasible using one of the low-cost options that you mentioned. Perhaps those would be the same as maybe a single project in your top category, understanding sort of the relative opportunity cost of doing a group of projects that may be more cost-effective but are lower down on the list relative to a single project that might be higher on the list but would only allow 1 or 2 given financing constraints. So I don't know if I made myself clear. I think I want to understand the trade-offs relative to costs and how many projects you could do with a lower cost that are potentially lower on the priority list.
Yeah, I think those are the type of comments that I think we will share with the consultant as they begin the financing financing plan. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Well, like I said, I can go ahead. Mr. Ramirez, I thought this presentation was really well done, especially when discussing the positives and negatives of the various ways of handling the water storage. And for me, I really like the detention basin method. It might be just because I'm most familiar with it in the neighborhood where I live myself, but I know that they're very effective in terms of capturing water, and 2, they have the other benefit of being a real green space, recreational amenity, particularly for these neighborhoods in the North Basin. And I think there's a great potential where these could be put in and add to the relative lack of green spaces at the moment. At the Lake Washington Stonegate intersection near where I live, I see people fishing all the time, hiking all the time, walking around, bird watching. And I think it's really great to have those multiple uses of the property. And I think another upside of that, as the report mentions, of course, is that could also help in terms of funding if there is that recreational component. And so whether that's a detention basin or perhaps a walking trail along an existing channel, as I think Commissioner Zimmer alluded to earlier, I think as many projects that can have those double, triple effects would be something I would consider as a priority factor. I also had a question regarding the financing component. Towards the end of the staff report, it was written that the city could bring together funds from a variety of sources, including tax increment financing funds or other special measures that have been passed over the past few years. Are there any limitations depending on those particular funding sources identified in terms of what could and couldn't be spent on this sort of project?
You know, that was a general statement, but without really consulting closely with finance on whether that money is available now, especially in the current environment. But typically, my experience has been that we do check in with them and council and yourselves to find out whether we can use funds from a specific source. I don't have an answer for you as far as which one is viable or not right now. So we would just have to basically, I hate to use the word, but compete for the funds and submit our proposal and cross our fingers that there's help.
Sure. And I'd love to learn more about that in future presentations.
Okay.
The other question I had was in terms of the criteria, social equity being one, which I think is excellent. But I was wondering how that was defined in terms of evaluating projects.
Okay. So this, ironically, this exhibit that's in front of me right now, I think I'm still sharing, right? Yeah. SB 35 maps disadvantaged communities statewide. And it's this purple, I don't know if we can see the same colors, light purple color that you see here. So most of West Sacramento, North Basin is considered SB 35. And so an exception would be the State Streets area here that I'm circling, the east of is the Park Avenue. That wouldn't be, and then the areas around City Hall wouldn't be. But besides those areas, and obviously the Bridge District is not considered a disadvantaged community. But most of the North Basin is considered SB 35 according to their mapping.
I see. Thank you.
So most of the areas got it.
No, please go ahead.
So I said so most of the flood-prone areas or areas where there was a need for a project did receive a point for disadvantaged communities.
And I think that's excellent. You know, it's understanding that both the North Basin and the South Basin have areas for improvement. It's a pretty shocking, though understandable, for the reason and the difference in terms of projects and funding needed between the North Basin and the South Basin. So I think it's excellent that the North Basin has an extra criteria there in terms of prioritizing, simply because it seems like there's been a lack of infrastructure done in the last decades, and it's high time that those neighborhoods get to see some of that. I was wondering, in terms of the fact that the North Basin has never seen a report, the South Basin hasn't seen a report since 2001, according to the staff report. Is there a reason that there's been so many years since this issue was evaluated by the city?
I think that the reason is common to agencies throughout state and really the country, storm drainage is often neglected because there are typically no impact fees associated with storm drainage. There are impact fees for water and sewer. So there's seldom a funding source for them. So there's typically not even funding to prepare these studies that we're undertaking. So that alone, there's funding to implement the projects. But it is an important facility.
I certainly think so. I was asking mostly because of my following question, which is, given that the report says there's roughly $200 million in improvements needed for the city of West Sacramento, is that relatively similar to similarly placed cities in terms of the improvements needed?
I don't know the answer to your question, but I know there is a. I don't know the answer when you compare the amount, but I know from what I've read that there's definitely a need to improve stormwater infrastructure throughout.
Thank you. That's my comment at this time. Fellow commissioners, are there any comments or questions? Commissioner Lichtenstein.
Yeah, your conversation just spurred all kinds of thoughts. So thank you for that. It occurred to me that if down the road you're looking for a way to further demarcate between top scoring projects, two notions came to mind. One related to the SB 535 designation. That's actually, percentile 1 to 100 across the state of scores. And so a 535 designated community is considered within the top 25 highest or worst scores. But that's kind of a binary cutoff. So if you wanted to further differentiate between projects, you could say, those in the top 10% of scores would actually get 2 points. And then those in the next, decile would get maybe 1 point, and so on until you kind of reach the cutoff. So it's a way of further demarcating between those that have very, very high social and environmental pollution burdens, those that have just high environmental and social pollution burdens, and then the rest of communities. So it's just that would just be one suggestion if you needed to differentiate additionally on that metric. The other thought, I noticed that buildings were all counted equally, irrespective of residential or commercial. And I thought, potentially a population weight would be an interesting metric to apply if, again, you needed to further demarcate between some projects that were top scoring. So those were the only suggestions, just thoughts. Maybe you wanted to look into it down the road.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment by Commissioner Lichtenstein. What is the population density in those flooded areas? Are they large lots with 4 people in a house, or are they, small lots with 3 apartments on a small lot? With extended families. I think that's actually, what is the dollar to people affected ratio for the improvements, in addition to disadvantaged versus perhaps less disadvantaged.
I could add on to that, varying it based on, as long as the assessor data is, I assume the assessor data is available, weighting it on a square footage instead of building, because you could have, a school, 50,000 square foot school that is only counted as one building versus, it's not weighted nearly as much as 5 homes that total 5,000, 6,000 square feet. So perhaps weighting that on a square footage basis instead of just strictly buildings.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Ramirez? Well, seeing none, the recommended action for this item is for the commission to provide comments and/or direction to staff. Mr. Ramirez, is there any additional areas of feedback you were hoping to elicit from the commission tonight?
I think I've gotten some good feedback and appreciate it. And I'll go through my notes and share them with the consultant and other staff, and hopefully next time around there'll be less questions. But thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ramirez, and look forward to seeing that item come back to the commission in a few months.
Okay.
Moving on then to General Administration Function Part 2 for tonight's agenda. Item 4A is the TMI Commission calendar. The next regular meeting of the commission is scheduled for Monday, March 1st, 2021. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
That is correct. And there is a January 4th meeting that is scheduled. However, since new commissioners will be chosen for the following year after that date, I will be canceling that meeting. So our next meeting is March 1st.
Perfect, thank you. Item 4B is reports from city staff. City staff, any reports?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, can you hear me all right?
We can.
Great. So a couple of things to report. One is that I was going to be returning to the TMI Commission with a status update and cooperative agreements for the I Street Bridge Replacement Project and for the I Street Bridge Deck Conversion for Active Transportation Project. At the last minute, the city of Sacramento had pulled the agreements for further consideration. And we've subsequently moved those items then into January, toward the end of January. Until I get a little better handle on what those changes are to the cooperative agreements, I chose not to provide a presentation in the event that I would have to immediately provide an updated presentation if things had changed subsequently. With that being said, I will be taking an update to the commission upon our next meeting in March. I also was to provide just a brief update on the green zones that were developed as part of the SACOG effort for Green Means Go. November 18th, we took a draft recommendations on the West Sacramento green zones, which just as a brief update, the green zones are intended to provide an area that is intended for future development or increased development along corridors that are zoned mixed use or high density, and also intended not only for intensification of development along those corridors, but also provide a means for future electrification of the corridors with an eye toward reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Those corridors included 5th Street from Lighthouse all the way down to Lake Jefferson, Lake Washington. 5th Street continued on to South River Road, which goes all the way to Village Parkway and then to Stonegate. It also includes Sacramento Avenue, which we had some discussion on, as well as the West Capitol Corridor. We have since submitted ATP applications, both state and regional, for the I Street Bridge Deck Conversion Project, as well as the Sycamore Phase 2 and 3 projects, all of which are within the green zones. And tagging on to the conversation that we had the last meeting, we are going to be submitting a regional ask through the formulaic approach through SACOG for funding. I believe we could expect around $400,000 to initiate a corridor plan for Sacramento Avenue. So that's great news. And that is also within the green zone designation as well. So we did adopt a resolution showing the green zone. I actually could share my screen really quick. Nope, it's actually been disabled. I recommend that the commissioners take a look at the November 18th City Council meeting. I included a series of maps that identify the green zone. But the good news is that staff is working toward implementation of corridor planning and toward intensification along our main corridors. That's it for my update, except for the fact that it's been great working with the commission. And it's been a pleasure working with each of you commissioners, and look forward to working with the commission again the next year. And also with Jennifer, since this is the last commission meeting that Jennifer will be participating in. Jennifer, it's been fantastic working with you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to miss all of you.
The feeling was 100% returned.
Thank you.
Item 4C is future agenda item requests by the commission. Commissioners, are there any future agenda item requests?
I have one. Yeah, I have one short request regarding the dock that was completed along the Sacramento River, the new dock. And I guess my question is it completed? And if so, will it be open to the public? I've noticed it not being open to the public, and I thought it was constructed with public funds. So I'm just curious as to the status of the dock and its accessibility for the residents, for the people that might be walking by.
Certainly, there are. It is a public dock with public funds. It is intended for public use. This is a project that was sponsored by the Economic Development Department. Jeremy Chappell-Delaney is the project manager for the construction. Last report that I heard, I believe it is completed with just a few odds and ends to tie up. I'd be happy to put in a request to have an update provided to the commission from Jeremy or from Economic Development representative that can provide you with a full update on the project.
And just for my clarification, is that the Riley's Landing dock?
That's correct.
Got it.
Yes,
Any other future agenda item requests? Well, before we adjourn, considering this is the last commission meeting for the 2019-2020 cycle, and when the commission meets again, it may be composed of us or of new faces. Do any commissioners want to say a few words for their service for the past 2 years? Commissioner
If I can have it for a second. So I've been on a commission for the city since 2008. So 12 years sitting on commissions, first an Economic Development Advisory Commission, and then of course the TMI Commission. But I am not submitting a request for reappointment. And so I just wanted to say thank you to the City Council and to the Mayor and to fellow commissioners and to the staff for all the work that you've all put in to help make our city better for its residents and for visitors, and also for any of those that are going to watch this broadcast on the website later or watching it live. If you are a resident and you would like to participate in your government, this is a great way to do it. I've learned so much about the city and about how it works and how different projects get approved and how they get implemented. It's been amazing. I've learned so much about internet cable and about roads and about just economic development. I came on when it was right in the midst of the Great Recession, and West Sacramento had an unemployment rate of 20%. And watch as the city adopted new ways to get growth into the city, and seeing it. And here we are in a different situation, a different crisis, and yet the city still rolls on. And it's because of the work that we all do and all of our fellow commissioners on other commissions do, of reviewing all the proposals that staff has worked so meticulously for. So I thank you for everything you do, and I look forward to seeing some updates on the site every once in a while. But I want to just acknowledge just the work that everybody does.
Thank you,
Thank you, Commissioner Wetzel. Do any other commissioners want to speak at this time? Well, I'll add on. Oh, no, I see two hands. I think Commissioner Zimmer first, and then Vice Chair Plahimas.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Wetzel. I'm reluctant to follow on that. I've been on the commission for 2 years, and I've learned a ton about how the city works, and projects that are underway and the tremendous amount of work that city staff put into planning years and years and years ahead, and then figuring out how to actually make these projects happen. And I appreciate the effort, and I'm quite impressed with what goes on. So I have enjoyed my time on the commission. I've learned a lot, and and I've been really grateful for the comments by the fellow commissioners as well. I think there's been a lot of insight that's been shared on the projects. And I also wanted to say to Jennifer, we'll miss you, and happy retirement.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. I'm going to miss working on commissions. My cats and dog will be happy that I'm home.
Vice Chair Polimas.
I cannot speak as quite as eloquently as Commissioner Wetzel, but why I joined is exactly what he described, and that was to make some impact and some hopefully some change within this city to improve the community for existing and future residents and business owners. And I hope that is something that we result in doing, and I take a privilege in this opportunity to do so. I hope to be back for another appointment, but there's turnovers in councils and with a new mayor, so it's not guaranteed. But hopefully I can be back at this next term to continue shaping our city with you all here tonight. Who's on tonight? Thank you, staff. I know a lot of the projects that you work on are politically challenging. You all put in a heck of an effort to try to do what's best in representing our city. And I hope that we all, continue doing that into the future and resulting in some unique and catalytic projects for our city, continuing its progress. Thank you.
Commissioner Love.
Thanks, Chair Hirsch. Just to piggyback off what the fellow commissioner said, I found this to be an incredibly rewarding experience, learning a lot about our city. And there's an old adage that all government is local. And when you get into, for lack of a better term, the sausage making that exists in these commissions and at the city council level, within the border of our odd little wonderful small town, I think it is surprising. It was surprising for me anyway, how overall and dedicated everybody who I've encountered while getting to participate in this is to making the city better and understanding how to make it better. It's not just the aspirational desire to get things done, but rather the ability to talk about the ways in which it can be done. And I appreciated immensely the opportunity to participate in that. And certainly thank Mr. McCoy and Jennifer for being wonderful stewards of this commission during my time here.
Thank you, Commissioner Love.
Commissioner Parker or Commissioner Lichtenstein, only if you wish to speak. Commissioner Parker.
I think everybody said everything here. It's been a privilege to be able to serve with all of you. I especially thank you, Chair Hirsch, for guiding us for 2 years and really helping us through the process of the parliamentary piece of this. You've done an incredible job chairing the commission and helping us through some of these larger discussions. It's been a real honor to serve with all of you and really have some engaging, thoughtful conversations, from large transportation projects to talking about our stormwater and retention basins. It's really run the gambit, and it's been a really incredible opportunity to provide feedback on really crucial projects for our city and our community, and knowing that we're doing things that are benefiting our city and our neighborhoods has been really fun, and I would hope to continue to do this, and I appreciate everybody that's been able to serve with me.
Well, I can only speak for the 3 meetings for which I've been a commissioner, but I have learned so much from from staff, from my fellow commissioners. I only hope that I can give back a fraction relative to what I gained from this experience in terms of learning about our city and how it works and how to make it better. So I think I said this on the first day I started. I'm here for my daughter. I'm here for her future as a resident of West Sac, and I really look forward, hopefully, to continued work with all of you. Thank you, and best of luck, Jennifer.
Thank you, Commissioner Lichtenstein.
And I'll add on to what all of my fellow commissioners have said, which is serving on a commission in the city of West Sacramento is an immense privilege that I don't think any of us take lightly, to represent our fellow neighbors and residents of West Sacramento when it comes to giving input and feedback on so many important projects. And of course, as an educational opportunity, I have learned so much about so many different areas of the city's governance that I otherwise would have very little idea of how it works. And so I'm immensely grateful to all of the city staff who have given presentations over the term of the commission's meetings and really dived into the projects that are both historically important and new innovations that continue to improve the city. Now, I'm immensely proud of the city's work when it comes to micromobility and just seeing the change in the last 2, 3, 4 years when it comes to micromobility options like Jump Bike. I saw that just today, Bird now operates in the city of West Sacramento. So it's incredible to see so many different options continually come in. And I'm particularly proud to have seen the development of VIA over the last few years. I think that's just an incredible example of an on-demand transit service that is almost universally welcomed by the residents of West Sacramento. It's something that serves everyone, is affordable and accessible to all ages and abilities. And I hope the city continues that path. It's incredible to see. And I've had the privilege of serving on a city commission for 6 years, on this commission for 4, and chairing for the last 3. And I think that the makeup of the commission now is the most elite caliber I've seen in terms of my fellow commissioners' diversity and areas of expertise and questions they present to staff. I think that everyone has been so insightful and really done their homework. For instance, Commissioner Zimmer just today really diving into the charts and the figures of these 100-page plans. And it goes to show that the city is not facing a deficit when it comes to passionate, interested residents who want to continue to serve the community. And so I encourage all my fellow residents of the city of West Sacramento, the commission deadline to submit an application is now extended to December 11th at 5 p.m. So anyone who is interested in serving the city or learning more about how the city operates or giving feedback in directing the city's growth, please, please, please consider submitting an application, because this is such an immensely rewarding experience. And it wouldn't be possible without the efforts of city staff. So to all the city staff we presented over the years, especially to our city liaison, Mr. McCoy, and our city staff commission secretary, Jennifer Schmidt, you will be missed. You've made this experience incredible, I think, for all of us, I can say confidently. I wish you nothing but the best in retirement.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And with that, I hereby adjourn the TMI Commission meeting for December 7th. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.